There's this really amazing community called Wild+Free that sends out newsletters, and in their current edition, the 49th volume titled Plant, there's a beautiful passage called The Thing About Learning Gaps by Amy Hughes. It beautifully reflects a lot of concerns that parents and students have when coming into homeschooling. One of the biggest concerns homeschooling and potential homeschooling parents have is that they don't follow the arbitrary learning schedule used in the schools. Their children will have learning gaps. I'm not going to ease these worries by telling stories about that not being true, because it is true. Your children will have learning gaps, not because they're homeschooled, but simply because no one can learn everything. Homeschooled kids, traditionally schooled kids, professors, doctors, moms, dads, they all have learning gaps. There are things they were never taught and never learned on their own. There are things they were supposed to learn, but it went in one ear and out the other. There are thousands of straight A students graduating from high school every year who were just like me. I went to a public school. I learned all the tricks to pass classes with the least effort possible, from flirting with boys to cliff notes to joining with the right people for group projects. I discovered ways to skip class without getting penalized, and then ways to pass the class even though I skipped them. So let's talk about my learning gaps. I graduated knowing pretty much nothing about science. I also graduated with little math knowledge beyond pre-algebra. Government and economics, nothing. Spanish, nothing. I did most of the work in these classes, albeit very last minute, but I just didn't care to retain it. I picked it up long enough to get my work done and pass the test, yet I graduated as a straight A student. And when I graduated, here's what I did know. Literary characters and ideas from Jane Eyre to Javert, even all the creepy inhabitants of Stein Street's Fear Street. I could recite monologues from Shakespeare, could wow an audience, and had written newspaper articles that created thought and discussion all over my school. I was invited to give speeches and perform at other schools, and was awarded in my community for my ideas and creativity. I graduated high school with loads of learning gaps. I also graduated high school with accomplishments and experiences of my own, with deep passions and expertise in things that mattered to me. My education was wide and meaningful, and filled with gaps and holes, as is education for everyone. So, will your children have learning gaps? Of course they will. But it is not because they are homeschooled. It is because everyone's education is personalized. Even kids who are thrust into an environment with an arbitrary, rote, common curriculum only take things in that they choose to. They let everything else go. John Holt wrote, "Since we can't know what knowledge will be most needed in the future, it is senseless to try and teach it in advance. Instead, we should try to turn out people who love learning so much and learn so they will be able to learn whatever needs to be learned." If you find yourself overwhelmed and stressed out by the thought that your children will have gaps in their education, take heart. Gaps are normal. Gaps are part of education. The important thing is teaching your children that learning is an action and a choice they get to make on a daily basis for the rest of their lives. Here are a few tips for growing passionate, lifelong learners who will be able to fill their own learning gaps whenever they're ready. Fill their atmosphere and their days with things you deem worthy. Let them dive deep into their passions. Model a lifestyle of learning by continuing your own education. Never fret about grade level or use terms such as behind and ahead. Keep a notebook of all the things your children do on a daily basis. You'll be amazed at how much they're learning and won't give gaps another thought. And again, that's called The Thing About Learning Gaps by Amy Hughes in the 49th edition of Wild+Free.